Good evening. The opinions and statements voiced by our guests do not necessarily reflect the opinions of this network. Enjoy the shows.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio. Broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
We've been expecting you.
Monday, time for our maven of the supernatural, Denise Pridemore. This is the Paranormal Pride. Join to listen and chat live on WBHM-DB.com or Spreaker app. Search WBHM-DB every Monday at 7 p.m. Central for your supernatural paranormal fix. Welcome to the Paranormal Pride, where the show is about the guest and the listener.
Welcome to the Paranormal Pride. I'm your host, Denise Pridemore. My guest tonight is Michelle Hamilton. She is an author and she's a friend of mine. Some of you who hang out with me have met her at the Mineral Springs Paracon at Mineral Springs in Alton, Illinois, back in the last 2 Junes. And she did I don't know if did you speak at both of those, Michelle?
Yes, I did.
Well, the last one I couldn't really go listen to anybody. But the first one I know I listened to you speak about Civil War ghosts, and I found that to be very interesting. Your take on all of that and your knowledge. And that's the reason that I'm having Michelle on, is because she has so much knowledge on the Civil War ghosts. She is also a docent at the Whaley House in San Diego, California. And she is the manager at the Mary Washington House in Fredericksburg, Virginia. And apparently, from what I read, she's worked all over that city doing different things. So she's going to be able to tell us a lot of things about the area. But I do know that Civil War spirits is a huge part of the area that you're living in and the state of Virginia. Everybody, sees Civil War ghosts all around that area. Gettysburg as well, Maryland. And another reason I'm having Michelle on is I'm from Maryland, so I know the area in which she's living in now from when I was growing up. So I find this like old home week. And so this is going to be a lot of fun just for me to feel like I'm back in the old area. So you just recently put out a new book as well, correct?
Yes, and earlier this year, a Civil War Ghost from Monroe Media came out.
And how's it selling?
It seems to be selling good. I'm very blessed right now.
Good. I'm glad, because I know that, during the last Paracon, I got to sit and talk with you. Well, of course, we were sitting right next to each other. Made it really easy. And I got to talk with you a little bit, but I didn't really get to go and really look at anyone's tables because I was working the Paracon. And so when did your book come out? Was it already out in June, or did it come out after that?
It came out in February of 2019.
So it was already out at that time, and I didn't even notice it. I'm sorry.
That's all right. There's been so many great books been coming out this year, and especially from Monroe Media.
Oh yeah, and a new one's going to be coming out in 2020 that we just saw the announcement to about Shadow People So that's going to be a really interesting one.
I'm interested in reading about shadow people. They've always kind of creeped me out.
Well, Mike and I've seen Mike's discussion on shadow people twice, and he asked me for feedback on the one he did at Spook Show Con, not last year, but the year before last. And we had a lot more in common than a lot of people do on shadow people. So we really had a good time with that one. I was the one that taped it for Facebook Live for him. So no, I paid a lot of attention to it. But I think the subject is interesting. So I can't wait to see how he takes the book. So, and of course, I can't wait to see the illustrations by Adam Tillery.
Yes, he's a wonderful illustrator.
Yeah, I got to go. See, I went to his art opening, but he lives here in Kansas City. So
very nice.
I've known Adam 9 years at this point, 9 or 10. And so I give him crap. But that's anybody who knows me knows that's my job. Give people crap. So I like it. It's fun. So, but in your books, do you have someone who does illustrations for your books, or are they pictures?
Not yet. Not illustrations yet.
Okay, well and how many books do you have out?
I have between authored and edited 6 books.
Wow, that's a lot. And you also have a blog?
Yes, Paranormal History. I started that one this year, and I wanted to kind of to be exploring the paranormal history, which I find very interesting.
There is a lot of history that relates back to the paranormal. I know when I started doing tours, back in the day, you used to be able to find newspaper articles about ghosts in the old newspapers.
Exactly. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Sorry, and that was the basis of Civil War ghosts. Is the accounts of people experiencing the unknown, the paranormal, the ghosts in the newspapers between 1860 to 1865.
And the thing, that part of what I've read, when you do the research, so say you go out into newspapers.com and you look up words that equate to ghosts or spirits. It may take you a while, but you may find some really interesting story in some of these newspapers. I'm not talking the little dinky town newspapers. I'm talking, the Washington Post and the New York Times, the Columbus, the newspaper in Columbus, Ohio, the Atchison Democrat, things like that were big newspapers back in the day, where they talk about it in detail. The spirits that were seen, Danville, Virginia, about the ghost train. Mm-hmm. It's all there, and it's not like just one person is giving this account. They go out and they talk to people, and they find that multiple people have seen the same thing, and it's amazing. Back then, they were actually the newspaper was actually doing the investigation of the paranormal and putting it in the paper. It's no different than the paranormal television, other than you can see it better. You don't have to use your imagination. But, I mean, if you go back and you think about it, it is a lot similar.
Yes, it is. And in fact, many of these cases that I cover in my book, they would go over several days or even several weeks, and they would be picked up by other newspapers, and other newspapers would be adding on detail of events connected to the haunting, connected to the people who are seeing these events that are taking place.
It's like, that's how the word about the Bell Witch got around. Originally was through newspaper articles and things, word of mouth, and then newspaper articles, and then other people would come and investigate this try to witness the phenomena. So
Yeah.
it's just really amazing.
It is.
Yeah, how this is evolved.
It is, and the Bell Witch case is another case that I'm fascinated in and hope to be able to look at that a little more in depth in the future.
That's one of the places we wanted to go and check out is Adams, Tennessee, and that was almost 5 years ago. I got sick and couldn't go, but instead we went to Sloss Furnace when I could walk. But that's a whole other story. But it's someplace I'd like to check out, mostly because it is the longest or the oldest known haunting in the United States. Documented haunting.
Actually, I found one that was much earlier. It's 1799 from Maine. It's called The Haunting of Nellie Butler, and that's another case where I've also want to look into. And it hasn't received as much attention as the Bell Witch, but the Nanny Butler case is also another fascinating early American ghost story.
The one that always draws my attention is the Greenbrier ghost, which, I know that's in West Virginia, but my mom is the one who told me about that one. But that's a whole other story, and that could be a book in itself.
Yes, there's so many great early 1800 stories that I find fascinating, and I think it's important to know the history of the paranormal and to know that this phenomenon has been around since the beginning of the nation, since the beginning of the colonies. And I think that's one thing that a lot of people discount right now. We tend to view the paranormal as a recent development due to the popularity of the paranormal show. So a lot of people view it as something that just started 15 years ago. Well, this is something that's been going on in American culture for hundreds of years.
It has, and the question is, what documentation has been saved about all of this phenomena that is usable, that we can go back to. I mean, when you think about it right now, the Holzer Files is doing that. They're going back to documentation. I know it's only going back to the 60s and 70s and prior, but maybe even the 80s and prior, but it's only going back so far. Is there documentation prior to some of these that we can go and look at and say, hey, we can do it better now? Can we prove this haunting? Can we disprove it? What can we do now? I don't know. It should be interesting to see what other documentation there is. So
the newspapers are a valuable resource, and I think, and also there are pamphlets, books that are available, and because so much has now been digitized through Google, through Amazon, that it is now easier to find some of these more obscure documents that before that would be at certain libraries, and so that helps. Well, I think we'll never 100% prove what really happened with the Bell Witch, what happened with Greenbrier, what happened in the Nellie Butler case. I think it gives an idea that these stories have been around a lot longer than we've given credit for.
I think that's going to be proven as a fact, that it's going to be, we're going to find out more, that there were actually more hauntings than we know about. The question, there's one question that I had talked about with Ron not that long ago is, do the spirits expire? Is there an expiration date kind of like thing? Are some of these spirits, do they only have such a long shelf life and then they're not around anymore? Do they cross over at a certain point? That makes you wonder, because why do we see spirits from, earlier than the 1400s here? Do we see what do we see? How long do spirits actually hang around?
Well, I think maybe that's where how old is the actual site? Because in England, there have been reports of Roman era spirits being seen, and I know in Egypt, at some of the tombs, there's been reports of strange things at the Valley of the Kings, at the Sphinx complex, at the pyramids that date to maybe an older ghost or an older manifestation.
But you assume if there were Native Americans here that we've had people in the United States, just because it wasn't called the United States, for a lot longer than what we know of. Or, I mean, is it because maybe we just don't have, it wasn't as populated, so we're not seeing them except in certain locations?
Perhaps, and maybe what the activity is different than what we expect. Native Americans had a completely different culture, completely different belief system, and so I don't think their spirits would necessarily instantly conform to a Western view of what a spirit should be.
Makes sense, because I know that down in Tahlequah, Oklahoma, they have an unusual. It's part of the Trail of Tears. It's near where the Trail of Tears ended, and they have all kinds of sightings there that can't really all be explained. They have spirits. They have cryptid sightings. They have UFO sightings. They have strange beings that they just can't be explained. So is it quite possible that some of these spirits turn into elementals, or maybe they're just elementals, period?
That's a possibility, and I also know that currently is kind of popularity the stories of the skinwalkers in the Four Corners region. That's another story that is starting to become more common or more popular in paranormal media.
That's true. I mean, I am seeing more and more about skinwalkers in other areas, actually, than just the Four Corners region. So that would be very interesting to find out more about at some point. So, where else would skinwalkers be? Would they only be in areas? I mean, why would they only be in one area when Native Americans were all over this country?
True, we have to look at each area from what each tribe's belief systems were, what their cosmology was, where the tribe was forced to move to through war and famine, where the United States government forced them to go to due to reservations. Yeah,
there's a lot of things to have to consider in all that. So, it just always makes me wonder. Things you think about when you're not thinking about, the things we always think about as paranormal investigators. We think about how to get a spirit to talk to us and how, this, and this. But sometimes we don't think about the whys. Why isn't it? Why aren't we seeing this? Why, that kind of stuff. The history. A lot of times, in the paranormal, we find that the history is so important, but yet we find that a lot of people aren't really doing any research. They're just going out and investigating. And on that note, we're going to come back to you and talk to you some more about some history when we come back from the break. But you're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. We'll be back with Michelle Hamilton in a few minutes. So I hope everybody's having a great time. And if you have any questions, please put them in one of the chat rooms and I will make sure those questions get asked.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk only on Paranormal Experience Radio. Broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... Nope. That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
To the believer, the evidence is overwhelming. To the skeptic, there will never be enough. Hello everyone. Join Kevin and Jennifer Malik, the host of Paraversal Universe, every Friday here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting. Also heard on WCET FM and The Rift. Log on or tune in as they check out the mysteries found within the 8 categories of the unknown and unexplained, including ghosts and haunted places, aliens and UFOs, theology and mythology, cryptids and monsters, urban legends and folklore, conspiracies, metaphysics, and forbidden archaeology. Listen as Kevin and Jennifer interview the top minds in their respective fields as they share theories and information regarding these unsolved mysteries. For future show and archive information, one can find Paraversal Universe on Facebook, Twitter, and MeWe under various Paraversal Universe headings. So, for excellent talk radio about the unknown and unexplained, check out Paraversal Universe, where all paranormal perspectives apply. Brought to you by the Northern Wisconsin Paranormal Society, Ltd., and produced by WBHM-DB.com.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 23 minutes after the hour.
Welcome back to the Paranormal Pride. My guest tonight is Michelle Hamilton, author and paranormal history blogger, and she's leading the life that a paranormal investigator would love to lead. She is the manager at, I'd assume, the Mary Washington House is haunted, but you were also the docent at the Whaley House in San Diego. So let's start with your current location, the Mary Washington House. Is it haunted?
We got a couple of spirits that hang or visit every once in a while. The house is about 250 years old, and when you go through such a vast history, there's sure to occasionally be a few things that are a little strange.
I can imagine. And for those of you who don't know, Mary Washington was George Washington's mother, correct?
Correct.
So, my mom's favorite place was the Martha Washington Inn in Abington, Virginia.
Ah.
And yeah, also it was used as a Civil War hospital. There's a love story that goes with this and all kinds of other stuff. And it's huge hotel down there now. And so when the first thing I thought of was that you worked at the Martha Washington, and it's like, nope. Got to make sure I, fact check what I'm putting on here, because I started to put Martha, and it's like, nope, it's Mary. So, what is the history of the Martha Washington House?
The Mary Washington House? The Mary Washington House is the third oldest structure in Fredericksburg, Virginia. We just had the building dendrochronology tested last year, and so we know it is confirmed to be one of the three oldest. There are probably a couple of other buildings that are right about the same age as the Mary Washington House. So the structure was built in 1754. It was originally a three-room cottage, 2 rooms on the first floor, a little half loft above, a little garret. on the top. And Mary Washington, George's mother, lived in the house from 1772 until her death in 1789 at the age of 80 from breast cancer. So she lived in the property during the American Revolution. Then following her death, the house went through a long history of other owners. The house is eventually added on as remodeled the way we see it today. And in fact, next year, 2020, the Mary Washington House will be celebrating its 120th anniversary of being a museum.
Oh, wow. And do you guys have events at the museum?
Yes, we did. In fact, last night, December 1st, we just had our holiday open house. That was free to the public. It's always the first Sunday in December. So please come and visit us next year if you can. And we'll be having events throughout the year. And also in May of 2020, we will be celebrating the 120th anniversary of the house, opening up as a museum. And for that weekend, is going to be a Sunday and a Monday. We're going to actually have the original admissions will be 10 cents.
Oh, wow. That is amazing. So do you have any events coming up that... Well, let's change that. Do they ever have paranormal events at the Mary Washington House?
We will be having our first one this year. I will have in October. It will be the spirits of the Mary Washington House. So we'll tell stories about what happens when all the guests leave for the day and we turn the lights out. We do have a couple of spirits in the house. I'm not exactly sure who they are. They don't fill out their timesheets. But we have some things that are rather are prankish, silly. Because after Mary's death, for about 30 years, the house was used as a boys' school. And so some of the pranks are rather things that boys would do. So we'll talk about that and just about the history of the house. And in fact, our sister museum, the Rising Sun Tavern, every November they have John Fraser Nights, and that celebrates or commemorates the passing of John Fraser, who was a tavern keeper. And there are a lot of things that go bump in the night at that property also. They're a little bit more rowdy bunch. They're a bunch of tavern spirits, so they're a little bit more rowdy. The Mary Washington House tends to be a little bit more of a tea-drinking, genteel type of haunting. Very gentle, very, very, very proper.
Oh, that sounds interesting. Okay, I know this is going to sound stupid, but it's not because I'm stupid that I'm asking it. It's just because there's people who don't know Fredericksburg very well. Are there other locations in Fredericksburg that are haunted?
Fredericksburg has the reputation of being a very haunted city. At this point in our development, it's not a subject that's talked about a lot. There's a lot of the sites are connected to the National Park Service, and the National Park Service likes to focus on the history. And so at this moment, some of the myths and legends of Fredericksburg really aren't focused on too much yet.
Okay. Some of the other places that you listed that you worked at in Fredericksburg, were they haunted as well?
The one that would say it's our interpretation that it may be haunted is not the official interpretation, would be Elwood Plantation. It's on the outskirts of Fredericksburg. It's on actually the Wilderness Battlefield. It was used as a hospital. Field hospital. So unfortunately, a lot of Confederate soldiers did lose their life there. And it's also the plantation where Stonewall Jackson's arm is buried at. Stonewall Jackson was injured during the Battle of Chancellorsville, and his pastor, Reverend Lacey, his brother owned Elwood. And so when Stonewall Jackson lost his arm at the Battle of Chancellorsville, they actually buried his arm in the family cemetery, and the arm is still there. But there are stories of things that go on at Elwood, but because it is controlled by the National Park Service, that's not the main topic of discussion when visitors visit there.
Okay, well, like I said, I figured I'd ask so that, because we have Fort Leavenworth, which we're going to be talking about some of that next week with my guest, Cassie Pennington. it's one of the oldest towns in Kansas, 1839. Considering that Kansas didn't become a state until 1859, it was back when it was a territory, the town does not talk about its haunted history. In fact, they decline to say that they're haunted at all. But yet, it's one of those things that everybody knows it's haunted. There's no doubt, So it's just like Fredericksburg. I know that there's a lot of places in Fredericksburg that are haunted. I did not know that there was, a put a sock in it order there.
Not so much put a sock in it. It's just we have to remember we're in the South, so there is the Bible Belt. There is religion a lot, and also, and I understand working in museums, there is a love-hate relationship with the paranormal. I saw that when I was working at the Whaley House when I was a teenager. There's a lot of researchers who come that are very respectful or very polite, and then you have the ones that give everyone in the paranormal a bad name. And unfortunately, that is what carries the day is the people who are disrespectful, who damage, who trespassed, who's accidentally, there's been a couple places that have actually been burned down across the country because of during a ghost hunt because of unattended candles. So that is what gives the paranormal a bad name, and that's where sometimes historic institutions don't like that. And also, you see that a lot where people argue that the paranormal is somehow being disrespectful to the dead or making money off the dead or focusing only on the ghoulish aspect. And also, let's face it, there's a lot of myths out there, a lot of incorrect history that sometimes is perpetuated by the paranormal community. And that's why I am so passionate on researching the history of the field and the history of the sites that we are investigating.
That's the reason why I like your take on the paranormal history, not just the paranormal. Because the history is so much more interesting than the legends and the things that people say happened at the location.
Well, without the proper history, some of the hauntings just make no sense.
Right.
The made-up stories make absolutely no sense. At the Whaley House for years, and it started in the 1960s when the house was preserved, and one of the ways the house got national attention was through the works of Holzer and other paranormal literature. But some of those early seances also either, the Civil League contacted a different spirit or confused the spirit and created, and a myth was created out of it of a ghost who actually wasn't there at the house. The Annabelle Washburn story. Annabelle Washburn never existed. There actually is a child spirit, we believed, that was at the Whaley House, and her actual name was Marion Reynolds, and she was a 3-year-old granddaughter of the Whaley family. But for 40 years, her name and her story was denied and neglected in favor of a fictional story.
I find, like I said, those fictional stories are the ones that irritate the life out of me. I don't know about you, but I know I go on tours and I listen to the tour, and there are parts of it that I'm going, no, that can't be true.
Yes.
And I just shake my head, and then I go home and I research it and find out that that wasn't true.
That's what I do.
Okay. I was just being mean.
Sorry, and I do the same way I read paranormal literature. I'll go look up the real story. I'll read the source notes. I'll go and try to track down, is that story true? Like, the story at the Martha Washington Inn. I would be the one tracking down to see, okay, is there any documented proof that these people existed? Is the story the way they say it is? Because sometimes it is true. Sometimes it's exaggerated. Well, let me take another example here from Virginia, another famous ghost story, Colonial Williamsburg, Lady Anne Skipwith, who supposedly, Lady Anne was a Virginia aristocrat. There were members of the aristocracy that had titles of lords and ladies in the colonies. And supposedly the story is Lady Anne Skipwith was staying at the George Wythe House in Colonial Williamsburg, and while at a dinner with at the party at the governor's mansion, she finds her husband flirting and maybe possibly cheating with her sister, and she storms home in a fit of rage. In the process of going to her house, she loses her shoe, and at the stroke of midnight, she can be heard to this day climbing up the stairs with only one shoe on, and in a fit of grief, she flung herself over the banister. Not true. Lady Anne Skipwith died from complications from childbirth. And she didn't pass up the George Wythe house. And yes, her husband did marry her sister, but it was several years after her death. And it was very common in the South and in this time period to marry the spinster sister of your dead wife, so that you could continue to raise the children by somebody that will care for the children and love the children with that familial attachment, because they would be the aunt, then they would become the stepmother.
Right, and I've got family that did that back in the day. So, which, like I said, that makes sense. You know, the story, the history part of it. It's the fictional part that makes you sit there and go, well, that's stupid. Why would that be? And I know everybody's heard my take on that. I think that you should research the locations that you go to. You don't have to necessarily do it before you go there, but at least after you've been there. You know, because when you first go to a location, you may not want to know every single thing there is to know about it. You want to go in with an open mind. And you assume that the person who owns the place knows the truth, right?
Yeah, talk to the
you assume that,
and don't let the ghost tour be your only source of historical information. When you go to Gettysburg, go on a walking tour, go to a house museum, go to the wonderful visitor center, experience all of the history and all the tours that the site has to offer. Because so many times you hear people in the community, "Oh, I don't like history." Well, you like it or not, we're talking to people these are people. You have to understand the time period in which they lived in. And when you go to an investigation, when you're talking to an 18th century spirit, a string of expletives is not going to get a response out of them.
No. So what do you think will get a response out of them?
Talk to them like they're human. Talk to them, have a little idea of the decorum of the time period. In fact, my other side interest, I like etiquette books from the 1800s, and I've edited 2 etiquette books, one from the 1860s and another from the period of Jane Austen. So we kind of understand how to address a person, how to talk to a person, what subjects not to talk about. They may not always want to talk about how they passed away.
I agree. I have a feeling that would be the case with a lot of them.
Would you constantly want to talk about how you died if we're hanging around in 100 years because we want to scare the living? Do you also constantly want to talk about the worst day of your life?
Probably not. Not unless I'm a drama ghost.
Of course, you're always going to have a few drama queens, but to be honest.
So, it makes you wonder. I mean, there is good to know stuff about the time frame in which your spirits have died, and one of the things that always irritates me about some of the places that we've been is that they always assume that the spirits died during a certain period of time. Not that it couldn't be a spirit, like Gettysburg.
Mm-hmm.
That it couldn't be somebody who died in an alley from a drug overdose 2 weeks ago. that it has to be a spirit from during the Civil War. It couldn't be anybody after the Civil War.
Right. Or before the Civil War. Gettysburg was actually founded in 1776, or became a permanent settlement. Well, as much as I love the original Ghost Hunters, just because of its cultural impact, and it was a show that I my family watched every week, the original Ghost Hunters, one of the most annoying episodes was when they went to Gettysburg, and the narration was, why are the ghosts of children being seen on a battlefield where thousands of soldiers died? It's because the battlefield was their home. The battle was fought on farmland.
Right. It was fought going through town. There's bullet holes in buildings in the town. It was, growing up in the area, not far, people may not know, but growing up in Maryland, Gettysburg is not that far.
No.
Antietam, I have a cousin who actually has a house that was a school that's on Antietam. I've never been there. Just found out about this. She didn't know I was her cousin until last year. But I want to go and check it out. But Antietam is very similar to Gettysburg in that sense. So, you've got, of course there might be children in the area. They didn't have to necessarily die during the Civil War. They could have died when they were settling the land.
Exactly.
So it helps to know the whole history of an area when you go, not just the history that you want to know. I want to know. I want to know the history of the Battle of Gettysburg. Well, the Battle of Gettysburg was 3 days?
Yes.
July 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, or was
First, 2nd, and 3rd?
Yeah. So right at that time, you know what? There was stuff before that, and there was stuff after that. They were still burying bodies on the 5th and 6th. They had to move bodies. You have all kinds of stuff going on.
They were burying bodies until November of 63, because when the Gettysburg Address was being held, when the dedication for the cemetery, they were still uncovering graves at that point. The whole city, it still is affected by this event.
And you know what? We're going to stop right there, and we're going to come back to this. You're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. We'll be back in a few minutes.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... Nope. That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experienced Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Welcome back to the Paranormal Pride. I'm your host, Denise Pridemore, and my guest tonight is Michelle Hamilton, and she loves Civil War history, and we're talking about that along with many other things. And before we move on, we do have a question in the chat room, and it's from Carl from Caldwell County Paranormal out here in Missouri, and his question is about when you investigate. So, and he wants to know what equipment you like to use.
I am a newbie investigator. I will go to a couple public ghost hunts a year, and so I'm just still trying to learn to use some of the technology. And so far, I'm just kind of relying a little bit on my five senses.
You got to start somewhere. So, did you investigate at Mineral Springs this last time?
A little bit, but just again, I was with Vanessa, and I joke I keep little old lady hours, so I'm usually in bed by 9:30. So I only did half the night, and I was with Vanessa Hogel when she was having some pretty incredible experiences.
And we were also having horrible storms, huge hail, and all kinds of other stuff. And luckily, the hail missed all of us.
Yes, that was insane weather. It
went around all of us, and because I know that I was sitting there praying that it didn't hit us, because we were going on vacation when we were done to where were we going? Bristol. We were going to Bristol, Tennessee. So it was a big deal that we got out of there without holes in my car. So,
yes. And then the Mississippi River was up high, so that was incredible to see that.
It was still out of its banks. It was still, half the town was still flooded. It was, luckily, Mineral Springs will never flood, but, I mean, I'm not going to say never. It would be unusual. It hasn't flooded since I've been going to Alton. And there's been a flood in Alton all but 1 year.
Every Mineral Springs floods, it's going to be because there's an arc going down the street. I mean, that's when you're going to be having Noah come back again.
I believe, I don't think the flood of 93 even got him.
No. Mineral Springs is built up high enough on a hill. They were smart to build up that building on the hill, so it's protected by just good building.
Right. Like I said, I don't even think the sub basement got any water in it in 93. So,
there's a part of me that I trust to be in these old buildings during bad weather. About a year and a half ago, there was a cell of a hurricane coming through Virginia, and we had tornado warnings. And I felt very safe in the as I worked. I was at the Mary Washington House. That house has withstood hurricanes. That house has withstood earthquakes. As I said one time, she's a tough old broad. So I trust these old buildings.
Yeah, we had a heck of an earthquake out there in 1984. So because I lived out there at the time, and it tore up a few of the places around there. But I worked at Friendly's, so you probably know what that is. But I worked at a Friendly's, and all the glassware got broken. So a lot of people couldn't have Sundays that day.
Oh dear.
So when I got in there, I got to clean all that mess up. But that was one of the. I mean, it wasn't a horrible earthquake, but because of the way that the land is up there, it was felt for a very long distance. There was a lot of bedrock. So, but yeah, I would say you're probably right. It's pretty safe as far as that goes. They're built to last. So,
yeah. I just trusted in the last earthquake that hit the Fredericksburg region was the mineral earthquake, and I believe that was in 2011. I was still living on the West Coast, and the Mary Washington House came out pretty good in that earthquake. I know there was a lot of chimney damage to some of the older houses, but that was about it. So fortunately, Fredericksburg escaped a lot of the damage, because there were some areas where some historic churches and some historic buildings got pretty damaged, and some of them had to be condemned, unfortunately.
Oh, that's not good. Tom McNicholas, which I know you know Tom, he asked, can other spirits from different time periods haunt the same area with other spirits and be, be seen interacting together?
I'm not sure. I believe they could be multiple time period hauntings or one location. I don't think there's a sign that says, you must be only from this time period to haunt. But I don't know if they interact or not. But that would be like a really good TV show. A comedy series of ghosts from different time periods trying to figure each other out.
Kind of like the others.
Yes, and in fact, I think there is a TV series in Britain right now where there's a manor house in which there's like all these different era ghosts haunting and bugging the modern people.
Oh, that would be hilarious. That's just me. I think that would be hilarious.
I find ghost humor highly funny. I think I think we need to also take while we'll always have the horror. I think there's actually a lot of comedy in haunting.
Well. I think there is. I think there's a lot of sarcasm. I mean, we were with Adam Tillery once, and we asked the spirit if she wanted to talk to us. And she said no. And we didn't hear from her again. And the way she said it, she just said it in a very sarcastic tone, like, no. And off she went. And it was like, okay. We had nothing else after that. Like, okay.
The ghosts of the Whaley House, they could be a pretty sarcastic bunch when they wanted to be. And occasionally, I think one of the spirits liked to bend the truth a little bit. I think she liked to tell something different to every psychic that came through. Oh. And I think she did that just for the pure amusement of it.
I think that's hilarious.
Yeah, they were a pretty sarcastic bunch.
How long did you work at the Whaley House?
I started at the Whaley House when I was 15, and I started as a volunteer. And I worked there through my high school years and into my early college years as a volunteer, as a paid guide, as a volunteer, back and forth. And then when my college duties got more pressing, I had to step away. And we used to continue to be there a little bit doing the decoration. So about 5 years pretty strong. 5 years pretty strong from late 90s to early 2000s.
Did you enjoy it?
I did. I loved it. That was my. I have been in my field since I was 15, so I'm pretty lucky, and I'll cheat into my age a little bit. That means I've been in this industry for about 20 years now.
So have you been back to the Whaley House since you left?
Since I moved from California, no, I have not. So this May will be 6 years since the last time I visited the house.
Is there one fact that when people go to the Whaley House that they don't know, something that they don't know about the house? Because when we went out there, we never got there. We went to the beach instead. I told you my priority.
The Whaleys were they were a musical family. They were a family that was plagued by tragedy, and I think they tried to make the best of life that they could. And sometimes life didn't play out the way that they wanted it to be.
You already said that there were some of the stories that weren't factual. And when the Whaley House was on Ghost Adventures, I believe it was. Wasn't it on Ghost Adventures?
It was on Ghost Adventures, and then last month it was on the Holzer Files.
See, I haven't caught that yet. I haven't caught that Holzer Files. I'll tell you, the Holzer Files that I have caught, there was 2 places I've actually been, and they were on school field trips. And one was the USS Constellation in the Baltimore Harbor. Of course, when I was brought home from the hospital as a baby, it was right down the street from there. And you'd only be caught dead in that neighborhood now. Just saying.
It's a rough city.
It's bad. And then the other place is the house on Garrett Mountain in Patterson, Jersey. I went there when I was a kid because I went to school number 5, and that was one of our field trips. And so both of those, before that, those other 2 shows before that, we thought were horrible. We weren't going to watch them anymore. And then we saw those 2, and it was like, these these two are much better than the first two they put out. Love Dave Schrader. Thought he did a really good job. We thought that we like I said, we liked his role, how he was dealing with stuff. We liked that. Liked Shane. I think it's Shane. I don't know. I can't remember the names of everybody, but I liked him, and I thought that it was really good. I have a thing about mediums. I don't know if everybody does, but I'm picky about mediums. I don't know if I like Cindy or not yet, so I'm just being honest. And but I wasn't going to watch the show anymore after the first two, and then I watched the third one and the fourth one, and I was like, I like these two better. So we'll find out. But one of my guests that I'm going to have on in 2 weeks, Amelia Cotter, is going to be on tonight. Actually, she is on Hometown Horror. So if anybody's out there that's listening, you might want to set your DVR for Hometown Horror tonight so that you can watch that, so that you can ask her questions on the 16th when I have her on. But she's one of Haunted Road Media Paracon's, or Haunted Road Media's authors as well as Michelle is. So, and she's also from Maryland, like I am. So you guys need to make sure you set your DVRs for that. And you met Amelia as well at the events that we've been at, and she's got some interesting stories as well. But the Holzer Files, I don't know yet if I'm still going to continue to watch it. But those last two are good. But what were your thoughts on them at the Whaley House?
I was pleased with the Holzer File episode. It took the history of the haunting in a new direction, and there has been a lot of historic developments on the research of the family since I've left, and which is awesome and amazing. And I do know the museum professionals who were interviewed on the show, and so I think it did a very good job. I'm not the biggest fan of Ghost Adventures, but I will say the Whaley House episode was near the end of their decent period. And that was one of the last decent episodes, was when they were at the Whaley House.
I guess I know some people who went there and they had some paranormal experiences while they were there. And they, to this day, they talk about the Whaley House as being one of their favorite places to go. And they also like the winery down the street and a few other things in Old Town San Diego.
Old Town is great history. There's a lot of ghosts, but in the Ghost Adventures episode where they had problems with the alarm, that was very common behavior at the Whaley House, and goes back to a very early seance. I believe it was one of Hans Holzer's mediums, and she was communicating with the spirit of Thomas Whaley, who built the house, and he was expressing his displeasure over the infernal bells and whistles of the modern day security devices, and expressing his displeasure that ever he opened up a window that the alarms went off, and his displeasure that it's my house, it's still my house, he should be able to open doors and windows whenever he wanted.
Oh, so he didn't care for the security of a museum.
Well, it was still his house. He thought he should have the right to be able to open up his doors and his windows at any hour of the day that he felt without having this infernal racket.
That's hilarious. So,
as I said, they were a pretty sassy bunch.
I can only imagine. So, everyone, you are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. We are coming up to the top of the hour break. So, like I said, take this time to set your DVR so that you can make sure that you watch later on the episode with Amelia Cotter and her husband of Hometown Horror, so that we can talk about that in 2 weeks with Amelia Cotter. And we will be back with Michelle Hamilton and some more stories and some more stuff, because we're talking about a lot of different things with Michelle, and we're having a good time. So come on back, and we'll be looking forward to hearing your questions. Thanks.
won't appear. I'm Lisa Lacera, Fox News. The White House says President Trump's team will not participate in Wednesday's impeachment inquiry hearing.
House Judiciary Committee Chairman Gerald Nadler calls the president's counsel turning down an invitation unfortunate, since the House made it a priority for the president to participate. The committee has set a Wednesday hearing with legal experts a day after the House Intelligence Committee is expected to send a report detailing alleged wrongdoing by President Trump to the Judiciary Committee.
Fox's Jared Halpern on Capitol Hill. A panel of law school professors said to be the first people to testify. House Republicans issuing a report saying in part that the evidence presented does not prove any of the allegations presented by Democrats. President Trump now in London for the NATO summit. Before he left, he criticized Democrats for the timing of the hearing.
For them to be doing this and saying this and putting an impeachment on the table, which is a hoax.
Though he went on to accuse Democrats of trying to undercut him during his trip. Former President Jimmy Carter back in the hospital for treatment for a urinary tract infection. Travelers still making their way back after the Thanksgiving weekend, but they're having trouble in the form of flight delays and cancellations. Stormy weather in the Northeast impacting flights across the country. This hour, just under 1,000 flights are delayed, with about 120 canceled, according to FlightAware. And the storm is not over.
Warnings that tonight we're expecting more snow, so this is sort of still storming, the calm between these two major storms. One more note, things really snarled up over at Logan Airport here in Boston.
Fox's Molly Line in Boston. The airports with the most delays, New York's LaGuardia and JFK, and Newark Airport in New Jersey. Wall Street tech companies led stocks broadly lower, getting the market off to a weak start for the month after a strong November. The Dow lost 268 points. The Nasdaq fell 97. The S&P off 27. America is listening to Fox News.
If you don't know your numbers, you don't know your business. That's the problem growing businesses have because of a hodgepodge of business systems. One for accounting, another for sales, another for inventory. If that's you, you know it's a mess that takes up too much time and too many resources. And that hurts the bottom line. You need NetSuite by Oracle, the cloud-based business management software that gives you the visibility and control you need to grow. With NetSuite, you save time, money, and unneeded headaches by managing sales, finance and accounting, orders, and HR instantly from your desktop or phone. That's why NetSuite is the world's #1 cloud business system. Companies that use NetSuite grow 3 times faster than the S&P 500. And right now, NetSuite is offering you valuable insights with a free guide, 7 key strategies to grow your profits at netsuite.com/Fox. That's netsuite.com/Fox to download your free guide, 7 key strategies to grow your profits. netsuite.com/Fox.
A lawmaker accused of campaign finance abuses changes his plea.
Congressman Duncan Hunter said he's ready to change his plea to avoid a public trial for the sake of his 3 children. He told a San Diego area TV station that he did make mistakes, did not properly account for his campaign money, and whatever time he's sentenced to, he will take it. He said he hopes the judge doesn't sentence his wife to prison, though. She pleaded guilty earlier this year to conspiracy and will be sentenced this spring. Last year, he told Fox News' Martha McCallum that his wife handled his finances throughout his career.
She was also the campaign manager, so whatever she did on that'll be looked at too, I'm sure.
Federal prosecutors said the Hunters misused more than $200,000 in campaign money. Jessica Rosenthal, Fox News.
Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot has fired the police superintendent Eddie Johnson days before his scheduled retirement, citing ethical lapses that included telling lies about an incident last month where he was found asleep in his car. After months of delay, Lebanon receiving more than $100 million in military assistance from the U.S.
The $105 million in foreign military financing funds for the Lebanese armed forces was released last week, but lawmakers on Capitol Hill were notified of the step today, even though the funds had already won congressional approval and overwhelming support from the Pentagon, the State Department, and the National Security Council. The money had languished in limbo at the Office of Management and Budget since September. No explanation has been offered by the White House for the delay. At the White House, John Decker, Fox News.
Placido Domingo saying he did not abuse his power in casting, the opera legend told an Italian newspaper. He says while he was general director in Washington and Los Angeles, casting decisions were made by a team of 4 or 5 people. The AP reported last summer allegations by more than 20 women of sexual harassment or inappropriate behavior, which he denied. I'm Lisa Lacera. This is Fox News.
This news report is brought to you by NetSuite by Oracle, the cloud-based business management software that gives you the visibility and control you need to grow. NetSuite is offering their free guide, 7 Key Strategies to Grow Your Profits, at netsuite.com/Fox.
Welcome back to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 5 minutes after the hour.
Welcome back to the Paranormal Pride. I'm your host, Denise Pridemore, and my guest tonight is Michelle Hamilton. And she's authored or been an author in 6 books. And if you want to go out there to Amazon and look for Michelle L. Hamilton, you will find all the books that she has written or has stories in. And she is an author for Haunted Road Media as well. So you can find a lot of her books out there by searching Haunted Road Media, also on Amazon. And are you planning on doing the Haunted Road Media Paracon again?
Unfortunately, probably not in 2020. I have some work commitments coming up at that weekend, so I may have to be to not be there this year.
What weekend is it supposed to?
It's the first weekend in June.
Okay, that's good because the other weekend falls around my birthday, and kind of. So we'll probably be there only because of the fact that we will be on vacation. So the first weekend in June, everyone, the Haunted Road Media Paracon will probably be. Let's see. Let me tell you, June 6th. That's Saturday. So, but I'm sorry that you may not be there. So
yeah, we have work commitments. We have a history camp in Fredericksburg for the local museums, and it's a half-day camp for children, and they come to all of our sites. And so history camp will be the week after that. And since Virginia and Illinois is a very long drive, and it's a very big part of our calendar, it's something as manager I can't be away from. So this is where I had to be put on my manager cap and focus on that part of my career.
Oh yeah, I know that drive. So because I've done it. So it is a very long drive, and there's really not a good, you could fly, but there's so much stuff you miss in between.
And flying nowadays is such a hassle.
It is, especially when you've got stuff you got to bring, like books.
It's so expensive.
Yeah, it is, unless you plan it out a long time in advance. So, but do you have any events that you plan on doing this year coming up?
Yes, I do have one coming up in September. I will be at the Plymouth Paracon in Plymouth, Massachusetts, the weekend of September 27th to 29th, 2020.
Are you planning on doing the Gettysburg Battlefield Bash at all?
I likely am. I'm working at filling out my calendar right now. So,
okay, because I know there's quite a few people that I know that plan on going to the Battlefield Bash because it is such a great event for. Is it Wounded Warriors?
Wounded Warrior Foundation, yes.
So, and Ron's a vet, so that's a really important organization to give to. So if you guys are all thinking about an event, check out Gettysburg Battlefield Bash. So that would be a very nice one because I know Kat loves that one, and so does everybody I know. So that would be an interesting one to check you out at. So make sure you guys all follow that. When it comes right down to it, what types of books do you prefer to write?
I love writing history. I would love someday to do fiction. But I just kind of like write what makes me happy, or just write about some of the quirky things that I find. I just kind of like get an idea, research it, and see if there's enough to have a material for a book.
Okay. So, when you were doing your latest book, the Civil War Ghosts, how How did you decide to start to do that book?
It was to answer a question that I was interested about. I wanted to know what people living during the Civil War, what did they think about ghosts? Were they seeing ghosts? Were they writing about ghosts? And the best way to research that idea is to see what was in the popular media of the day, what was in the newspapers. And so that's where I tracked down that storyline.
And how much research was involved?
It was a lot of going through newspaper archives online and weeding out the wheat from the chaff to find those little nuggets of stories.
When you did the book, did it take you a long time because of the research, or was it's just such an interesting book for you to write that you were able just to do it pretty quickly because you were just so interested?
It was an easy book for me to research. It took me about 8 months from research to submitting it into On Road Media. So it was about a year to 8 months of getting it done.
That's not too awful bad. Not with a full-time job anyway.
Yeah. So I use my days off to research that. So there'd be, some days where I could only do 1 day of research, and another day I could maybe get 2.5 days of research.
So,
at a time.
Are you working on another book now?
I am working on, again, I just came back from Salem, Massachusetts, so I'm going into, okay, it is just my own interest and my curiosity is witchcraft cases in the 18th century. That's everyone always focuses on the 1600s, the 17th century, but there were cases primarily in England in the 18th century, and it's interesting. In the 18th century, about 1735, witchcraft is decriminalized. So women will no longer be executed for being a witch. They could be fined or imprisoned for fortune telling, but not for witchcraft. So we're seeing in the beginning of the 18th century, there are some cases of women in England being killed in a lynch mob mentality, meaning the people in the town come and basically storm their house and drags them out, and they are dispatched that way. And that continues actually throughout the whole century, but after 1735, at least the victims could get some recompense afterwards. The judicial system is punishing the mob for their treatment of these women.
That sounds really interesting. I've always wanted to go to Salem only because of the history value. I'm not really that interested in the witches. I'm just interested in the history part of the witches. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, the witches themselves, they were not witches. They did not, right. Unlike the one guest at the witch's house, he was fussing at his wife. I'm not coming into a house that promotes witchcraft. They practice witchcraft. And I looked at him as nicely as I could and says, sir, there was no witchcraft. None of the witches were actually witches.
No, there's more witchcraft there now than there was then.
The Puritans would be rolling over in their graves,
right?
At what they would be receiving, which is really be fascinating to figure out on a paranormal level. Ever some of these spirits know what's going on to their city. That would be fascinating on alone, or they just strictly focus on the trauma that happened to them in 1692. But the history of what was going on and some of the claims that were going on are entirely fascinating.
It is. Like I said, I find the historical piece to be to be enthralling. It's what it's turned into, the commercialism. I'm not all that excited about.
It's a fun, quirky little city, and I think, again, the commercialism, a lot of it is the people who live and work there, they deeply respect what happened. The commercialism, to a certain extent, keeps the town going.
Mm-hmm.
In many ways, it's like I'm watching this TV series Hellier right now, the Greg and Dan Newkirk series, and they talk about the fact that if it wasn't for the Mothman, we would never talk about Point Pleasant. So
most likely, but again, I have no desire to go to Point Pleasant because that was supposed to be a one-time thing.
Point Pleasant, I've gone through there. It's a nice little town. Also, it's really fascinating on the history point of town. They claim that they have the first battle of the American Revolution. So take that, Massachusetts. That could be that's a fun little historical period in time and a little battle that happened between the colonists and the Native Americans in what is called the Virginia Lord Dunmore's War, which was an early Native American colonist scuffle over Western territory that in many ways helped lead to the American Revolution.
Right, and a lot of people would have no clue who Lord Dunmore is, and that West Virginia was not really, back in that time, was just a territory.
West Virginia was part of Virginia until 1863, right. And Lord Dunmore was the last colonial governor of Virginia. His actions in Virginia pretty much handed Virginia over to the rebellion, to the American side.
And like I said, most people wouldn't have a clue about that, and it's strange when you think about it that West Virginia became a state because of the Civil War, because it was separation at that time. So it is very strange when you think about it. All the history out there, out here where we, you're talking about 1692, and out here the earliest thing we can find is 1830 something.
Well, it's kind of funny. I'm from, live in Virginia for 5 years, and you become a Virginian, and you go to Massachusetts, and it's like, 1620, 1630. So I'm like, Jamestown, 1607.
Right. And
Virginia, we had the first Thanksgiving. Sorry, Massachusetts.
Right. I mean, I've been to Jamestown, been to Yorktown, been to all those places, and there's buildings in parts of the country that were built in the 1400s. And, one of the people said that one of their dream locations is Savannah, Georgia. Then we've got St. Augustine that's got some of the oldest buildings in the country.
St. Augustine is the oldest city in the 50 states. They're 1500s, and I know some people like to argue that even Florida had the first Thanksgiving first. So that could be another battle. Who had the first Thanksgiving?
We've got all kinds of battles over everything.
Massachusetts, I'm sorry.
But it does, at this point, you know what? We're all together. Let's have fun with it. But I just know there's so much history in that area that you could drown in all the history alone. But when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about some of that history in Virginia. I know that you've only been there 5 years, but there's a lot of history there that it just soaks right into your bones.
Oh, it does.
And you can't go anywhere without stepping on a piece of soil that's historic.
Oh,
so yeah. So you're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. We'll be back in just a couple minutes.
You're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Several U.S. presidents are on record talking about the UFO mystery.
Yeah, Presidents Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan both had UFO sightings of their own, but the current presidential campaign might be the first in which UFO disclosure has been championed by a major party candidate.
DIA, CIA, it moves around, is operating a program to train psychic spies to spy and use their powers against Russia. John Ronson writes about this in The Men Who Stare at Goats.
The first known sighting of a ghost took place right after Abraham Lincoln was assassinated in the late 1860s during the administration of Ulysses Grant.
Project Paperclip, Clinton releases it all in 1998.
Possibly the unequal cooling of its surface.
I say, do you still think it's a meteor, Professor?
I don't know what to think. The metal casing is definitely extraterrestrial.
It's a place where UFO hunters and scientists gather to examine paranormal activity in the region.
Some of the documents, this is bringing Nazi scientists into the United States to work here. So we fought against the Nazis, and it's not, this again is not a revelation. As early as 1947, 1946, we knew some of this, right?
On the paranormal, will we see U.S. President Barack Obama's foreign policy go intergalactic in a quest for gold stolen by aliens? We'll tell you at least how the White House responded to claims the chief executive has been teleporting to Mars. But let's get to today's Capitol account.
UFOs, hauntings, psychic abilities, conspiracy, ESP, cryptozoology. There are many things that remain unexplained in the inexplicable world around us, and we're talking about them here, looking for answers on WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama. The truth is out there.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 23 minutes after the hour.
Welcome back to the Paranormal Pride. My guest tonight is Michelle Hamilton. She is a paranormal history blogger, as well as a paranormal history, Civil War ghost, so paranormal history author, as well as I've lost my complete train of thought. She's a manager of a location called the Mary Washington House in Fredericksburg, Virginia, and she used to be the docent at the Whaley House in San Diego when she was a teenager. So she's been doing this for quite a while, and she's still only 29. I don't know how she's done it. So, but Michelle, how did you get involved with history? Was it just you're in school and you found history to be exciting, or what was it?
I was a strange child. I always had a love of history, ever since I was very young. So it's something I was just born to do.
And how did you find that you liked the paranormal?
I had an experience when I was on a field trip in San Diego. I thought I saw an object move on its own. I'm not really sure to this day how much was it a vibration, how much was it just an overactive imagination. And so it kind of became a secret, since something that I was interested in. And then it was really blossomed working at the Whaley House, because that was so much of the house history. We were America's most haunted, and we had so much visitor interest was in the paranormal, so learning to not separate the two, but to make sure that what we were talking about was focusing on the history, and that it was the correct history, not just the myths and the legends.
And from that, it sparked all these other things, the books and the. Did it also spark you wanting to work in historic locations?
Yeah.
Yes. Or were you, when you got the job at the Mary Washington House, were you hoping that it was haunted, or did you already know that it was haunted when you took the job?
I took the job. It was because of the history. The ghosts were secondary, and again, it's not the whole being of the house. Is we have a couple of things that go bump in the night, and a couple of things that we all joke about. But to me, the Mary Washington House is very much a history-driven job. It's a history-driven position. Again, it is determining the truth on Mary's life. She is a very misunderstood by male historians, and now she's starting to finally get the historical treatment that she deserves.
How is she misunderstood?
Mary Washington, she was a strong, independent woman in the 18th century, and the 18th century is different from the 19th century and the way that we view how a woman should behave and how a mother should behave. And that means she wasn't sentimental or loving in the way that we want her to be. And historians want her to be this type of woman. And she was a widow. Her husband died when she was 35. She had 5 children under the age of 12. George was her oldest child. She is actually her husband's second wife. That means her children are the second family. That meant that they were not going to get the prime inheritances. George was able to inherit Mount Vernon just through a luck of fate because his brother died young, and his brother had children who did not survive. The one child he had one daughter who would have been the inheritor of Mount Vernon. She passes away at the age of 3. So unfortunately, the luck of fate that George is able to move up. So Mary had to fight for her children, fight for the position that they had in 18th century society. So that made her sometimes appear to be a tough woman or a grasping woman, but she wasn't. She was a woman who loved her children deeply and was going to make sure that they had the best possible advantage to succeed in life.
That puts a different light on things, at least in my mind. I mean, if she had to make sure that everything was taken care of for her kids, she didn't have to be a cuddly mother. She had to be a tough mother.
And in the 18th century, women weren't cuddly, or the mothers weren't supposed to be cuddly. You never knew when a child was going to die. Right. And it would have been a lot easier to have a slightly emotional detachment, because it meant that final goodbye would possibly be a little bit easier. Of course, it wasn't easier. It wasn't easy. Mary did lose one child as an infant, but it was, again, the way that the life was viewed. Childhood was viewed as being very short. Mary herself didn't have much of a childhood. She's orphaned by the time that she's 12, so she has to become an adult at a very young age. So children were expected to be adults at a very young age, and it was just a different outlook of life. So in the 19th century, the 20th century comes along, and women are supposed to be these flowery, loving, nurturing, caring, Disney princess, Mrs. Cleaver from Leave It to Beaver idea of what a wife and a mother should be. Not one who is managing the books. Not one who is making sure that the overseers are doing their job, who's going to court fighting that the tax collector is trying to find her wrong, unjustly. So this idea of a tough woman didn't jive with modern day expectation of what a woman should be.
She got the job done.
She did. She did a darn good job. I like to say she saved her bacon. She kept George from joining the British Navy. He was about to join the British Navy, and when she realized that was not a good career option for her son, and she actually says to him, George, I would prefer you not to go. This is not going to be a good opportunity for you. And George basically goes, okay, Mom. And, today they make it into this, oh, he was so angry. Oh, he was so distressed. According to the family, she said, hey, I don't want you to go. And he says, okay, Mother, I will follow your advice on this matter, and I won't go to sea. But a couple years later, she's letting him become a surveyor, and she's letting him go out into the vast territory of West Virginia, Pennsylvania, and Ohio.
Well, maybe she still felt that was safer.
A little bit safer, but then she was nervous about him joining the military, and a lot of historians will condemn her for that. But when your son is writing letters telling her about bullets zipping past his head and how charming that sound was, I think any person has a right to be afraid. When George was rubbing it in a little bit about, hey, Mom, I'm in a dangerous job.
Well, it's always a dangerous job, and we always worry about our kids. It doesn't make a difference.
Oh, yeah.
It's, like I said, it just sounds kind of funny. But during the break, which you guys didn't get to hear, we were talking about, one of the things that I find interesting was the Lost Valley, or the Lost Colony of Roanoke. And, I don't know what happened to them. And Michelle was telling me about that she recently saw on TV that they had In Search Of for that. And she was telling me her theory. Would you like to tell people your theory on what happened to the Lost Colony of Roanoke?
Sure. It's not an original theory to me. But from the limited research into the Lost Colony of Roanoke that I have done, I have always believed that there were some survivors of the colony, some of the English colonists who did survive, and that they moved inland, and some of them were assimilated into the Native American tribes. And there is some oral tradition to support that. Generations later, when English colonists are returning to the area, they are encountering young Native Americans, but they appear European. They're described as having blonde hair and blue eyes. They're described as living in 2-story wigwams, and they're also described as having a language that is a mixture between British English with some English slang words that were common at the time period that the colonists would have left England, but also they're also speaking the native dialect. So they're kind of speaking this hybrid language of Native American, but also English European. And also there has been some recent DNA testing done of some of the the residents who've lived in that area that they believe that the colonists went into or settled around. And these families, their oral tradition dates back to the Lost Colony. Some of the families, in fact, have the last surname of some of the colonists that disappeared, and they were able to do a DNA testing on one of the gentlemen, and his DNA indicates that his ancestors came from the area of England that the colonists of Roanoke came from, and that also his family line also has Native American specific to that region. So suggesting that there has been, through time, a mixing of the family line between English colonist and Native American.
Like I said, I just find it interesting. I know that the Josh Gates had done one on the Lost Colony of Roanoke. Now, I mean, I know that there's a lot of different shows that have been done on that, and I agree. Your theory is not new or unique. It's just I hadn't seen the In Search Of, and I didn't know if anybody else had. But I just find that it to be an unusual story, and all the intricacies that go with the story, the things that were found after they left, when somebody came back looking, when the search party came back looking for them a few years later, it was just a very strange story, and in all honesty, how I came across it was, I came across it the first time when I was younger, when I lived in Maryland. Just one of those weird things, you come across all kinds of stuff when you live in the area. And then again, as an adult, I came across the story again, watching Supernatural, of course, which, there's very little basis in reality when you watch the TV show Supernatural, but there is usually a little bit of fact mixed in with the fiction in Supernatural. So, and that was the, Croatoan. What in the heck does that mean? But I don't know if any of us will ever know.
No, and that's what makes it fun, I think. I think we do as a culture need mysteries. We need legends. It's a way of bringing the past to life and continuing. Every culture has one.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just like every town has a lost love story where some girl has jumped off of something and committed suicide because she couldn't have the love of her life. Every town. And so every time I come across that ghost story, and it's like, well, that story's everywhere. I mean, just like Crybaby Bridge. Well, there's a Crybaby Bridge in every single state. Was this story just adapted for, did they want it to be here? Gravity Hill. Is there a Gravity Hill everywhere? Apparently, because we have one down the street.
There was a Gravity Hill not too far from where I lived in Spring Valley, in California. I lived in a suburb of San Diego called Spring Valley, and there was a Gravity Hill on an area called Dictionary Hill. And the reason it was called Dictionary Hill was when you bought the lot, you were given a set of dictionaries. Because the lots were actually on these horribly sheer hill that made building extremely difficult. So you got a land with a dictionary.
So, like I said, there's all these stories, and so you find them all, and you kind of just laugh at the repetition of the same story in a different place. Like when people go, "How you doing today?" Same story, different day. So basically same story, different state or city, depending upon. And I know that in the paranormal, we come across that a lot. In history, sometimes it's the same way, or so it seems. But there is a question I did want to ask you. My husband, Ron, he really enjoys Civil War history. And he had read a story about a location called Salyers Creek in Virginia.
Yes.
And I know that the battle there was supposed to be even bloodier than Gettysburg. And it's just horrible. And have you been to that battlefield at all?
I have. It's in the west, a little more western part of Virginia. For us, it was a day trip, and it is run by the Virginia State Parks. So it's a lovely location, and it was particularly bloody because some of the soldiers being used, it was near the end of the war, kind of almost the last gasp for the Confederacy, and they called up young cadets from VMI, the Virginia Military Institute. So we have young boys, children between the ages of 14 and 18 fighting and dying. And And again, it was fought on farm fields, farmland, and there was a family that was caught in the middle of it. And I know the house was used as a hospital, and there were reports of residual or active haunting still going on that location. In fact, our friend Vanessa Hogel, who is a psychic medium, she visited there several years ago and could feel the presence of the family being there during the battle.
It's a place that we're going to go at some point. It just so far hasn't been along the path of where we're going to go. So, because it's further east than where we've been.
It's a beautiful location. It's very pristine. It's very well preserved. You're not going to see a lot of monuments, so it doesn't kind of mar that historic landscape. Though as much as I love the monuments at Gettysburg, sometimes they can get in the way. So it is a very pristine place. They've preserved the farm. You're able to see they've preserved and in some cases reconstructed the outbuildings, so you can understand what it was like to live as a farm family. This was not a plantation owning family that was affected by this battle. So you get an idea how average Virginians lived.
Right. It was a blue collar family. And here's a story to go with that. My uncle went to school in that area. And every day after school, a bunch of the kids, this would have been back in the 50s, would go out there and would look for relics. And some people actually made enough money to become rich off of that land back then. He didn't, but yeah, my cousin was telling me the story about that, and so was my uncle. A couple, last year when I was talking to him on the phone, I was talking to him about that. And he told me some stories about going, that the kids after school would go out there and dig around on the battlefield looking for bullets and buttons and other things like that, and made quite a bit of money off of the stuff that they found.
Yes, there are still people who they're the Civil War relic hunters, and there's still a lot of relic hunters here in Virginia. Of course, there's a lot of very good relic hunters, and what they'll do is they'll get permission to go and excavate the relics. Of course, there's always a few that don't, and they give everyone a bad name.
And on that, we'll be back. This is our last break. You're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. Please put your questions in the chat rooms, and I will make sure that they get asked. So come on back.
You're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experienced Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
To the believer, the evidence is overwhelming. To the skeptic, there will never be enough. Hello everyone. Join Kevin and Jennifer Malik, the host of Paraversal Universe, every Friday here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting, also heard on WCET-FM and The Rift. Log on or tune in as they check out the mysteries found within the 8 categories of the unknown and unexplained, including ghosts and haunted places, aliens and UFOs, theology and mythology, cryptids and monsters, urban legends and folklore, conspiracies, metaphysics, and forbidden archaeology. Listen as Kevin and Jennifer interview the top minds in their respective fields as they share theories and information regarding these unsolved mysteries. For future show and archive information, one can find Paraversal Universe on Facebook, Twitter, and MeWe under various Paraversal Universe headings. So, for excellent talk radio about the unknown and unexplained, check out Paraversal Universe, where all paranormal perspectives apply. Brought to you by the Northern Wisconsin Paranormal Society, LTD, and produced by WBHM-DB.com.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 45 minutes after the hour.
Welcome back to the Paranormal Pride. I'm your host, Denise Pridemore, and my guest tonight is Michelle Hamilton. And Michelle, before we go any further, I'm going to ask you, if somebody needed to find you, how would they find you?
They can find me on Facebook, Michelle L. Hamilton, author, and also my blog, Paranormal History, and on Amazon, Civil War Ghosts, Michelle Hamilton, and so that's how they're able to find my books. And I will be updating my Facebook page and my blog throughout the year when I get booked for more Paracons throughout the year.
Do you do things other than Paracons?
I do. I love going to museums. I try to go to a couple living history events throughout the year. I'm moving more into the colonial period. My love of working at the Mary Washington House is starting. The 18th century is starting to take over. But so I try to spend time with family, spend time with friends. I have a puppy. I'm planning on taking her to lots of historic sites this next year as she gets older.
Oh, well, that'd be fun. And since you live near so many, Gettysburg's not that far. Then you got Richmond, and all that area is not too far away. I mean, most everything is a day trip for you.
It is. That's the great part about living here. I used to go to Disneyland as a day trip, and now my day trip is going to Colonial Williamsburg. In fact, anybody lives in the Virginia area and wants to go to Colonial Williamsburg, they're having a great sale right now for Cyber Monday. Buy one, get one half off for an annual pass. Great way to support a great foundation and go throughout the year to see a wonderful site.
I'll tell you, my first visit to Colonial Williamsburg was get the King's Dominion. I hate the Eiffel Tower there, so it had a loose plank in it, and I didn't like it. But that was my first experience with Colonial Williamsburg when I was 12. Was going to King's Dominion. Never been to Busch Gardens, even though it's maybe an exit away, but that was it.
I've never been to either, but we may be going to King's Dominion they have a Christmas celebration, so I may be going to King's Dominion for the first time, but I go almost every month to Colonial Williamsburg.
Well, when I was growing up, they would close pretty much after Labor Day. They were closed, but I also have family down in Virginia Beach, so I've got to get out there. Have you been to any of the places there in Virginia Beach? Because I know that there's some wonderful there's a haunted lighthouse down in Virginia Beach, and there's a plantation there that's haunted just right downtown. I mean, it was right on the cover of the book that we both have stories in.
Yes, I have been to Ferry Plantation, and I wrote the chapter on the history of Grace Sherwood, the witch of Pongo Creek. Her story is connected to Ferry Plantation.
So, because I know the Ferry Plantation used to be, at one point in time, and it wasn't that long ago, that it wasn't in the middle of town.
No, it was in the outskirts. Now it's in the middle of a modern day housing neighborhood. And when the first time I went there, it's like, where is GPS sending me? Because we're in the housing development, and next thing you turn a corner and there's Ferry Plantation.
Oh, I know. I saw that on I was looking at it on a map, and I was like, well, this is kind of weird. This is kind of like Waverly Hills. Like, what in the world? It's in the middle of a subdivision. It's like, this seems a little bit odd. There's a gas station across the street and all this stuff. And so, but, like I said, I hear stories from that area all the time because of family. I hear stuff from the Naval Air Station there, Norfolk, about it being haunted, and there's all kinds of stories there. That there's all kinds of stuff out on the island. I don't even know what it's called, but it's on the Chesapeake Bay Bridge tunnel at the other end. I've heard stuff from over there of Native Americans over there. I've heard all kinds of stuff from different people. And I don't know about you, but I just find the history in that area just to be very unique. And I think it's mostly because they've kept that history alive for all of us for so long.
Yes, and a lot of it is because the families have stayed in the area, and so not only is this a national history, it's a personal history, it's a family history.
Well, I know my family history goes all the way back to the House of Burgesses, and sitting right next to George Washington is John Carrington. That is one of my family members.
Oh, the Carringtons of Carrollton Hall.
Mm-hmm. My dad's middle name was Carrington. It goes all the way back for the Roach family on our side. So eventually Carrington becomes Roach in Virginia. So but that's my family. And so when I went to Williamsburg, I was amazed to find my family was there in the House of Burgesses.
Wow. Yeah, my family has a long history of blue-collar workers.
Mine is too. I mean, I also have family members that were tobacco farmers in Virginia with dirt floors and other things, and family in Spotsylvania County and Pittsylvania County. So, like I said, I know the area enough to be dangerous.
Right. Well, then you need to come out and see us sometime.
Oh yeah. I mean, I grew up probably not 75 miles from where you're at. So, Baltimore County's not that far from anything out in that area.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I can tell you one thing. I can tell you moonshine history pretty well for that area and the Appalachian part of that state.
Well, I've heard some rumors about Spotsylvania that we won't go into.
Yeah, I'll tell you, my family's probably in that history too.
Hey, but from my family history and from a family from Mississippi, my family was rum runners too. It's all fun. It
is. I mean, history's history, and we should learn from it.
It doesn't say anything about who you are as a person. That sometimes some people don't want to go into it because it's a little distasteful. It has no reflection on who you are. Everyone has a black sheep in their family.
Guess what? I'm raising my hand. I'm the black sheep. Raise your hand if you're the black sheep in your family. I am that black sheep, and I'm proud of it. So, let's see. What? My husband just raised his hand. There are no black sheep in Ron's family. No, there's not. And so, what do you have any other radio shows you're going to be on anytime soon?
Not for the rest of the year. But again, please follow on Michelle L. Hamilton, an author on Facebook. I will update when I am going to be on more shows, more Paracons, and that's just a great way to follow. You know, when my next book is coming out, all that latest information.
Well, I'm looking forward to here eventually getting Civil War Ghosts. I got to get caught up on all the other books that I have first, so I can give it the proper amount of time to read, because I know from the times that I've met you that how detailed you are. So I want to make sure I give it the best amount of time I can. But everybody, if make sure you find time to watch that Amelia Cotter and oh shoot, see, the football game's on my TV, so now I'm having a brain fart. Haunted Hometown and check that out. It's a location in Wisconsin she'll be talking about. And so she's going to be an interesting guest on the 16th. Next week, my guest is going to be Cassie Pennington, and she's a new paranormal investigator. Cassie's so sassy, in case you guys have heard me talk about her. I'm going to be talking to her, finding out what's been going on with her. And I think it's going to be interesting to hear from a new paranormal investigator's standpoint of how all this stuff looks from the outside. So, or at least coming in, how does it look to you, Michelle? You said you're a new paranormal investigator. What do you think about all the stuff that paranormal investigators do? The equipment. Is there something that you think needs to be changed?
Oh, I think everyone that I have met has been wonderful. So I have not been a part of any of the paradrama. I have enjoyed the people that I have investigated. I kind of think less reliance on the shows. I think the shows dictate a little too much of how we investigate and how we react. But everyone has been wonderful.
Well, I'm glad that that's been your experience, and I hope it stays that way. And the only thing I'm going to do is encourage you to ask lots of questions. If you're not hearing the answer when you're out there investigating, ask the questions to the people you're with, because there's an answer to your question, even if they don't know what it is. The answer is, I don't know, but ask the questions, because those questions are what brought you into what you're doing now, writing these books and doing the job that you do. It's the same with paranormal investigating. Ask the questions. You may not get the answer you want, but you'll get an answer. So
all historians are nosy by nature, because we're poking into the lives of dead people. We are. We're asking questions about things that they wouldn't even want us to know about.
Yeah, I deal with data, and a lot of times the data tells a story that the people don't want to tell you the answer to. So a lot of times data tells you the truth when people can't seem to figure out what in the heck's going on.
Right.
So, and history is the same way. And, history does repeat itself a lot of the time on the things that make a difference.
Yeah.
So, and when I tell people a lot of the times, it's history is cyclical. It goes in cycles, and you'll see the same thing over and over. It happens, but data is the same way. So history is nothing different than data. So it's just the amount of data that you have and the amount of data that's good. So, but, I hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving, and please, everyone, if you go out and do any shopping, be safe. People are, for some reason, they're angry out there. I don't know why. And with the weather, be safe, and please come back. Tune in next week to WBHM-DB.com and see what we've got going on. I know we've got shows that you're going to love. Just tune in and check them out and see what you like, because there's something for everyone on our network. So I hope everybody's going to have a great week. I know I'm going to. So please, everyone, do. I also wanted to tell everybody, if you're down and depressed, and you need somebody to talk to, find me on Facebook. I'll listen. And if I can't, I will find somebody who can, or contact the Suicide Awareness Helpline, and there will be somebody there that will listen to you. You have a great day. You're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting. Have a great night.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio. Broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.